Halloween, All Hallows Eve, Samhain. On this night, Halloween decorations are up and sweets are being handed out to children. In this documentary, we'll be taking a deep dive into the history of this beloved Irish holiday and how this ancient festival became one of the biggest holidays of the year. I've always wondered where Halloween originated from and how it became the holiday that we all know today. Fortunately, I'm here to speak with Michael Fortune, and hopefully he can answer some of these burning questions. There he is now. Hiya, thanks for agreeing to this interview. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael, for coming here today. I have lots of questions for you. So, how did Halloween come to be?
There are centuries of layers in the Halloween tradition that we know now, and there are, I suppose, there are kind of four main real elements to it that I kind of have uncovered over the years. One is the most important one. It's a turning point in the year because we're going in from the autumn into the winter. And there are three other layers to it. One other layer to it is the layer of mumming or dressing up, which is the kind of dressing up aspect to it. That's a strong tradition. The third layer then would be, I suppose, the idea of remembering the dead. That's really important with light. And we've got candles all around us here. That's really important with light and fire. And the fourth one then really, there's a really strong element of devilment and acting the Aegis, basically, messing. That's a really strong part of it. And those four layers are kind of what make up the kind of Halloween experience we have now in this part of Ireland.
Okay, so how did people celebrate Halloween?
People celebrated it in different ways, and I suppose if we look at the food and the feasting, that was one of the really strong parts. So what we would have done, we would have had celebrations where we would have had been eating apples, we would have eaten nuts, and even within our folklore, there are cut-off dates. The 1st November, a lot of older people would tell me, very strong in the western counties, and it was done here a little bit as well. They always said that you wouldn't eat your apples on the ditch or blackberries or sloes on the ditch because they said that the puka or the fairies or the devil was out that night, and they would have done their business on them, as the old people have said, right? So basically they warned children and adults as well not to eat the fruit after a certain date on the ditches. So food definitely was really important, this idea of feasting. Even today, commercially, we can go to a shop, we buy a barn brack, and we buy a barn brack because that's what people would have cooked here years ago. They would have baked them at home, which usually on the open fire, and they would have had little tokens in them. And again, games were all, predicting your future was always really important. And even now when you go to buy a barn brack in any supermarket or shop here in Wexford, you'll find a ring in it. One of the games that people will play is a game called the plate game or the saucer game, but it went by different names. Basically, you would get a child and you'd have maybe 5 plates in front of you. And on each plate then you will have a different icon, a little thing for a symbol. So the ring was always there when you're going to get married. Money was going to be rich. A stick meant you were going to get hardship. Clay meant you were going to die. And water meant you were going to emigrate. And what you would do is you'd blindfold a child, which is always an experience. The experience of being blindfolded and losing your senses is kind of always an interesting experience anyway. And you'd turn the child around, and then the child would hold his or her hand out, and then they would drop it down onto whatever plate that they landed in. That was going to tell their future for the year.
Good thing it's just a game, right?
Another simple game as well, and probably some people, young people still play it as well, is you get an apple and you spin it, and sometimes people get you spin it and you keep spinning it with the A, B, C, D, D, and you keep turning it, and whichever letter in the alphabet that comes off it, that's the person you're going to marry. More people get the stem of the apple and pierce it A, B, C, D, E, and it stops on E, and then you go, then the E, then you do it again, and then it spells out the initials of the person you're going to marry.
A, B, C, D. A, B, C, D. D. Who's DD? So, can you tell us a little bit about how Halloween came to America?
The Halloween experience in America is heavily influenced by the Irish Halloween experience, and it simply came down to the movement of people. I suppose we're looking at mid-1800s when there was a mass movement of people over. And and you will find that it went to the eastern parts of America and then just spread. And it spread mass media, television, radio, films, and it just became what it is now. What we've kind of tended to, I suppose in the 80s and 90s, we tended to re-import a version of the American Halloween experience. And one of the dressing up parts for us changed slightly. The dressing up part in Ireland was always the idea that you would dress up, or dress down really. You would dress down so no one would know you. That was always the experience at us. While the fancy dress thing being popular in America, and now that's here, and now people will kind of fancy dress up. So we'd always notice that comparison. But I have to say this, and it's really important. Now, we will claim everything in Ireland, and we'll always claim everything from our own county, our own parish, but that's just our nature, whatever, right? But we can't rule out the Scottish experience and the experience in the Isle of Man in particular. And that's really, really important because the Scots dressed up as well, and they went out in the exact same way.
Can you tell us about like the buzz with like pumpkins?
Yeah, I suppose we all know Halloween as the biggest visual to do with Halloween. There's one here beside me, are pumpkins, and pumpkins became popularised in America. And any of us who grew up in rural County Wexford or anywhere in rural Ireland, we would have carried out turnips on the night. You know, you would have, in most cases, people would have taken a turnip of a neighbour's field and they would have carved it out. And literally, you put a little candle in it and you brought it out with you, you know. And there was a magic. That's one thing we forget as well. There was a magic on Halloween night because you're out in the dark, and especially if you're a child, there's magic because you're in the dark, you're dressed up, no one's going to know you, right? There's a great crack, there's a great little bit of freedom there. So this idea of carrying a little light out with you, sure, it was just, again, a little bit of something that was very special.
Boo. On Halloween, we used to go trick-or-treating, me and my friends. Well, when we were younger. Trick-or-treat! But now that we're a little too old for trick-or-treating, but like obviously too young to go to parties, we stay at home, play board games, watch horror movies, and tell each other scary stories. We get our scary stories off our phones, or off a well-known website called creepypasta.com. It has quite a lot of famous stories from the early 2010s about teenagers who went insane. Just teenagers who went insane, that's kind of it. And it's not like scary kind of scary, like keep you up at night kind of scary. It was always the fun kind of scary. And that was our folklore. My
mother had a saying, said that, again, they said that there were no rules on Halloween night. Yeah. And when you look at the Isle of Man experience, they always said there were no rules. So it was kind of once it got dark, there were no rules until it got bright the following day. So that's when the spirits walked. That's when everything happened. There's stories going around, and I've come across a story in Ireland and also the story in the Isle of Man. Yeah. And in the Isle of Man, the story was the same as us, was that we dressed up in disguise so that we would fool the evil spirits were walking that night, the puka, the different names, the devil. There were different types of names we associate with this kind of evil character that would come and harm the living that walked as well. People did believe that there was evil that night. I recorded a woman in Waterford a couple of years ago, and she said that on Halloween night they would always get a sign of the cross marked on every child or over the door to stop the devil coming into the house.
Could you tell us about folklore tales that are maybe still told today?
Yeah, I suppose one of the things with Halloween is people like to be scared, right? There's a whole area, a whole genre of film, even when you stick on television, or horror films. That's one of the narratives that's developed, this idea. And for some of us, again, pre-television era, it was kind of a night where you would tell, in brackets, ghost stories. Yeah. And in pre-electrification in that area, if you told a story, then I'd tell a story, and then someone else would tell a story. Everyone was trying to better each other with stories, right? Everywhere we went, we told stories about places being haunted, bends and roads where lights were seen, things where yokes were heard, right? That's in us. And there are no end to them, but the sensation and the feeling of telling stories is really important. And I suppose we're coming from a really strong oral tradition in Ireland, is that when you hear a story, you imagine the visual in your head. While when we're working in film, which we're working in now, is that the visuals are spelled out for you. And they're the differences, you know. When you hear a story, you imagine differently and you fill in the blanks. Well, film is different. But to me, I suppose I'm old-fashioned still, but I like the listening and the telling, and I like the visualising myself. And I suppose that's really important, that at that time of year when you're a little small child going out, is that you're going out in the dark and all those things are, you know, it's dark and it's cold and all those things are feeding you. And I said, if you do hear something or someone makes a bang, you're on all as friends as well. Then sure, you're all bouncing off that same kind of energy, right?
Yeah.
And that's to me, it's kind of special. Come here, it's a special time of year. Halloween is without a doubt a brilliant time of year. It's one of my favourite times of year. I'll be honest with you. Halloween and May are my two most. To me, if you ask me, I love the light and I love going into the dark. We've no other option. We're here now. We have to accept that we're going into the dark, and to me, they're really, really important. And I love the Irish Halloween experience, and I love that we had an influence for sure on the bigger one, on a global scale. We had a huge influence on the American experience, from a small little island. So I love that story. But I love how we do it ourselves, and those little things we do. And every part of the country and every family and every village does it differently. But come here, it's a great time of year. It's magic, and we're in the winter now, and that's what it'll be now until spring comes and summer comes, and we put up our May bushes, and the light will be back in our lives again.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks for all the answers, debunking the myths and stuff like that. Thank you for that.
Great, thanks a million.
It's just me. I hope you learned as much as I did. I certainly like the part where we learned about all the folklore tales and how many of them still live on today. I'll definitely be ready for next Halloween. Or Samhain. Ia hauna huna div.